Welcome back. Are you a first-time home buyer wondering what it's going to take to close on a home? Have you been saving for your down payment but are not sure what those closing costs will be? Today I'm going to break down an example of a $700,000 home or condo that you buy and explain to you what the closing costs would be here in Toronto or outside the city in the Greater Toronto area. We're going to look at the difference between the two, look at that thing called land transfer tax. So let's dive into it. When buying a home, you should budget at least 1.5 to 4% for these closing costs. These are additional expenses above and beyond the saving for the down payment that you've been doing. Let's quickly summarize your typical closing costs. There's the land transfer tax, lawyer fees, home inspection, title insurance, property tax adjustments, and your moving costs. We'll get deeper into each of these costs momentarily. Let's first tackle the land transfer tax. When it comes to buying a home in Toronto or outside of Toronto, this is your biggest expense, and it doubles when you buy in the city of Toronto. So what's the land transfer tax? It's essentially a tax that you have to pay as a buyer that the government demands. Now, each of us have to pay this tax. So if you're buying a home in the province of Ontario, there is the provincial land transfer tax that you must pay. We're going to talk about how that's calculated. The land transfer tax for you will essentially double in payment when you buy in the city of Toronto because they charge an additional land transfer tax called the municipal land transfer tax. So let's look at an example. I promised we would use a case study of a $700,000 home. So let's look at what it looks like when you buy a home in terms of the land transfer tax cost that you must incur. So when you buy in the province of Ontario, you've got to pay that Ontario land transfer tax. It's a tiered tax system. This is how it works. For the first $55,000, you pay 0.5% land transfer tax. That amounts to $275. Between $55,000 to $250,000, you pay an additional land transfer tax of 1%. That's why it's tiered. It varies and it's added up this way. So you have to pay $1,950. For our $700,000 case, of course, it's much more than $250,000. So there's a 1.5% land transfer tax on the amount between $250,000 and $400,000. That amounts to $2,250 extra. And then above the $400,000 mark, we're looking at between $400,000 and $700,000, a 2% land transfer tax, which is an additional $6,000. We add up all those figures and we get a total of $10,475 as your Ontario land transfer tax. So if you're buying a home outside the city of Toronto, say Brampton, Mississauga, Oakville, Georgetown, Vaughan, wherever it might be, that is your total land transfer tax. But it doubles when you buy in the city of Toronto. So if you decide to buy a condo in downtown Toronto, as an example, you're essentially paying double of that, another $10,475 in this case, which is a total of $20,950 if you were to buy a $700,000 condo, for example, in downtown Toronto. Now, there is some good news. The good news is that there are some rebates that you may qualify as a first-time home buyer. What are the rebates? In the province of Ontario, you may qualify for a $4,000 land transfer tax rebate. That helps, of course. And if you buy in Toronto, in the city of Toronto, you may qualify for an additional $4,475 rebate. So in our example of a $700,000 home, if you bought outside the city of Toronto, you'd qualify for that $4,000 rebate, hopefully. Then your amount, which was a total of $10,475, would have dropped to $6,475 as a total that you'd have to pay for your land transfer tax. If you bought in Toronto with that additional municipal land transfer tax, you qualify for that additional rebate of $4,475, your land transfer tax would be $12,475 in total after the rebates. All right. Now, let's look at what those closing costs may look like for you. I did a quick summary at the start of the video. Let's dive into some of the fees, their typical ranges. Lawyer fees, and when I say lawyer fees, I'm including disbursements, are typically between $1,500 to $2,500. But of course, I advise you to have a conversation with your real estate lawyer. Simply ask them, what's the total bill going to be? Don't just ask for the legal fee. Ask them to break down the total fee. If you bought a home, in this case, in my case study for today, for $700,000, for instance, your price may vary, of course. Ask them, if I bought a home for this price, what would be my total legal fees, including disbursements, everything? What's the bill I'm going to have to pay? Ask for a full breakdown so you're well prepared. Title insurance is usually what you have to pay the lawyer as well. So that should be part of the breakdown they give you. Just showing you here, that's an additional $300 to $500 typically, but again, will vary depending on purchase price usually. Home inspections are very important. These are costs that you incur while you're going through the purchase process. As your realtor, if you decide to work with me or any realtor you work with, a professional will ensure you're protected, that there is a condition for you to inspect the home before you fully close on it, so you can uncover any major defects if they do exist, anything that might be a problem. You want to know of it before you give your final yes to the deal. So these are your typical costs. And there are nuances, so we should definitely talk. You want to work with a certified home inspector, one with a proven track record, one with great reviews, one that specializes in looking for things that you need to be aware of. One thing I will tell you, and it's very important, the purpose of the home inspection is not just to uncover defects, because they typically don't really occur. When you're buying a resale home, of course, it's not brand new. There will be some wear and tear. There will be things that you need to do to maintain and repair it. Nothing that's a deal breaker. The main purpose of having a good home inspector in your corner is that you want them to walk you through what you need to do to maintain your home, to avoid unnecessary expenses, short-term or long-term, that you could avoid if you just do the right maintenance on a regular basis. You've got to look at property tax and utility adjustments. They vary, and it's good to have a good range. I usually advise clients to, budget maybe an additional couple $1,000. But again, it depends on the property tax that applies to the home you're buying, depends on your typical utility costs that may incur. So these are conversations we need to have. What this means is that if you bought a home and the seller's already paid for property tax in advance, so let's say you closed on September 15th, but they paid for the property tax for the whole year till the end of December 31st, you naturally owe them money, and your lawyer's going to make those adjustments. If they paid for their utilities in advance, you owe the money. So those are the extra costs that I'm putting in this category here. And of course, your moving costs, which vary depending on the mover you get, depending on if maybe you have family and friends helping you. So you need to factor that as well. I want to give you 3 important tips for this video as we reach the close. It's very important to save beyond your down payment, 1.5% to 4%. I think I'm covering this bullet point, but that's important to budget for it, and it's a range. Also, definitely check for those first-time home buyer rebates, not just the land transfer tax rebates, but other incentives that you may qualify for. And of course, work with a trusted realtor and a mortgage specialist. Closing costs can catch many first-time buyers off guard, but truly with the right planning, you can navigate them with confidence. That's what I'm here for. If you're comfortable with my vibe, reach out to me. My contact information is below. If you like, please subscribe to my channel. If you like the content, I've got a lot more great content for you to come. If you have any comments, please leave them below. I'm listening. I'd love your suggestions for future videos. Wishing you a great day. Thank you for joining me.